Hi, I'm Ash and I make vlogs, and in today's vlog we are going to be talking about things I find weird about living in Melbourne as a Kiwi, and this is part 2, so I'll link part 1 below if you want to go check that out. And I've also written blog posts on these, so I will also post those in the description. But with that being said, let's get into the video. First of all, don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoy my content. And yeah, I have my phone here because I don't want to have my laptop, and this is things I find weird about living in Melbourne as a Kiwi, aka from New Zealand, or like a New Zealand expat from my perspective. So the first thing that I find weird is the road signs, particularly the ones that are quite morbid. Like, me and Luke is my partner, and we'll be driving somewhere and I just see them and like it makes me think of death automatically. So some examples are: only sleep cures fatigue, yawning and micro sleep can kill. And I feel like the ones in New Zealand are a lot more simplistic and less distracting. The second thing that I find weird is that everyone gets super excited about snow, and I get it. If you haven't seen it before, it is exciting, but if you've grown up in the South Island of New Zealand, you probably have seen a lot of snow, and I find it really annoying, like especially if it gets on your driveway and you have to shovel it out, and like you're walking in it and it's cold. That's really annoying. It is pretty to look at when it's on the mountains. Like when I lived in Christchurch, my commute from my mum's house to uni, you could see all the Southern Alps every morning with snow on it, and that was really pretty, but it was like distanced. So I guess I don't want to use the word desensitized, but it's not something I get super excited about. The next thing is that you must have health insurance, and it's so expensive. Like, I think I pay around $130 per fortnight for my health insurance, but I feel like if I didn't have it, all my dentist bills would be so much more expensive, all my other health bills would be really expensive, and it's just but I feel like in New Zealand you're not really expected to have health insurance because there's a lot of like public systems that allow you to get free healthcare. Like, for example, I believe my mum just had free surgery, and all my specialist appointments back in New Zealand for my IBS and things were always free. The ones here aren't free. Like, I had to pay for an ENT specialist for my nerve damage, whereas in New Zealand if you went through public it would be free. The next thing is that people can be quite condescending here to you if you, as a New Zealander, use Australian slang. So, for example, in New Zealand, esky is called a chili bin, and in Australia it's called an esky based on the brand. That's like a slightly different slang for the same thing. So it's like a cooler, essentially. And I had a party, or was at a party, and someone said, "Wow, I'm proud of you for using the word esky," and it was just so condescending. The next one, so no one here knows what twink is. It's literally just white out, so like if you make a mistake and you want to rub it out, but apparently people outside of New Zealand don't say twink, they say white out. And then I learned eventually that it was just a brand name in New Zealand. I was like, oh, no wonder. The next thing is there are a lot more takeaway options here than in New Zealand. I don't know if that's changed since I've left New Zealand. I'm sure they would have got more. But the ones that I really miss from New Zealand are Hell's Pizza, which I believe might be in Queensland, but I'm not 100% sure. I do miss the NYC Benedict Bagel from Macca's. That is delicious. And some different places that are in Australia or Melbourne are Red Rooster, Schnitz, Taco Bill, not Bell. New Zealand has Taco Bell. Please excuse my accent there. Burgatory, really good burgers, and Aljana, we weren't really a fan of that. The next is there are so many bugs, spiders, creepy crawlies, and they're so much bigger as well. I feel like I've said this before, but I'm saying it again. And I think I've come so far. Like, I was so scared of everything when I first moved here. And now, like, we had a huntsman on our balcony, like a baby one. And it jumped on Benji, our dog. And I was just like, oh, Luke, can you get rid of it? But it wasn't as scary. I also find that the work-life balance in Melbourne is insane. Like, people work 40 plus hours a week and they still seem to have time to eat out for literally every meal, every dinner, things like that. And I'm like, how are you not tired? Like, how are you not burnt out? And I do want to say here, to be fair, when I was working a corporate shift work job, I was able to have a bit of a better social life than I do now. But then when my health declined, it wasn't as good. And I'm sure there's a lot of people in Melbourne who experience intense burnout because of this. Also, I find that going out to eat for every meal is pretty common, as well as drinking every night. And I don't mean getting drunk, I just mean like 1 or 2 glasses of wine or drinks with dinner. I feel like this does happen in New Zealand, but I personally only really had 1 drink if I went out. I didn't often drink by myself. Sometimes I would if there was leftover alcohol after a party or things like that, but it wasn't like, oh, you've got to have a drink with dinner. The next thing I find weird is apartment living, and it's not seen as scary, and my bias from living in Christchurch, where there was lots of earthquakes, is going to come out here. But in Christchurch there's not heaps of apartment buildings, but in Melbourne the whole city is full of apartment buildings. You can still get the chocolate pods here, which is really exciting. I didn't realize they were discontinued in New Zealand, but yeah, you can't get them anymore, which they were really expensive, so I can kind of see why they were discontinued in New Zealand, but I didn't really realize until I looked them up here and was like, oh yeah, they're an Australian snack, but they were discontinued in New Zealand. But great snack. Really like the Twix ones, really like the Snickers one and the Mars one, but I think the Twix is the best one. I'll put in a picture somewhere in here so you know what I'm talking about. I do remember going to Blockbuster though as a kid and getting pods as a snack. Like, that was the best thing ever. RIP Blockbuster, and welcome creative destruction. Okay, Twisties. This is a weird one because the chips are different here in Australia to Twisties in New Zealand. So Twisties in New Zealand is kind of like rations. That's the best way I can describe it. I'll pop in photos. And the Australian ones are like cheese twists. So they're similar but different. So I'll put in 2 side-by-side photos here so you can see what I mean. I do prefer the New Zealand ones, and I feel like I might get hate for this from all my Aussie friends. The ice cream or ice cream on a stick, Golden Gay Time in Australia, is called a cookie crumble in New Zealand. I'm guessing New Zealand is a bit more PC, which is good. I do prefer the name cookie crumble because it's like this caramel cookie crumble thing. There are no hedgehogs. Like, what? There are echidnas, but there are no hedgehogs. I do miss hedgehogs. They're very cute. I also know that I discussed parking in part 1, but Luke and I, on our travels in Rye, and the Mornington, we recently came across a parking meter app where you had to download the app. Like, there was no like meter reader or anything like that. You had to download the app, and it took us so long to figure out the app, and it was so bloody complicated. I was like, what if you are like really old and don't understand technology? What if you don't have a phone on you? Like, are you just gonna get fined? What happens if there's no reception there? I have so many questions about this, but it was just weird to have an app and not just a parking meter. The next one, okay, the news cycle on free-to-air TV feels a lot more constant, like you're always watching the news in Melbourne. In New Zealand, you do get news throughout the day, like 6 a.m, 12 p.m, midday, and 6 p.m, and sometimes you get first at 5:30 sort of thing. So it is still a lot in New Zealand, but I feel like it's less in your face, like 2 or 3 channels in New Zealand, but in Australia it just feels like the news is always on. There's like so many news channels, like Channel 7, Channel 9, Channel 10, ABC, and then you've got all the other worldwide channels as well on free-to-air TV. This one probably doesn't fit this category of vlog, but I tried a matcha the other day and I really liked it. I don't usually go for them because I feel like they have this weird, the best way I can describe it is like a Play-Doh wasabi texture, and it's not a wasabi flavor. But I really like this one I got from a cafe in Rye. It was amazing, and I've tried another one here since, but I got it in takeaway cup, and I think that actually makes a difference. Winter is cold, but it's not as cold, if you get what I mean. So people don't seem to like the police here. Also, I think, okay, my camera is level according to the level on the tripod, but if it's not level, I apologize. So people don't like the police here, and it kind of feels intimidating when they are around. Like, for example, when we drove up to Echuca and then back, there was like a car crash one day, and then on the way back we were letting Benji go out to the bathroom because it's a long drive, and it was near a police station. I can't remember the area. It's where all the like paintings are. Rochester. We were in Rochester, and a police officer came over and was like, oh, a corgi with a tail, and she had like a gun in her holster, and that's completely fine in Australia, but in New Zealand the laws are different. So the police aren't supposed to carry guns on their person. They have tasers and things like that, and at times when it's needed they have guns, but usually they're in the boot of their car. And this one was like, she was a really nice police officer, but it did scare me a lot. I was like, oh my god, she could shoot me at any time. Like, I'm not doing anything wrong, I'm literally just taking Benji to the bathroom. She was really nice, but the common consensus here is that police aren't very nice in Melbourne and Australia. Also, people seem to be a lot more open to the paranormal and things like that, which I didn't expect, because I feel like in New Zealand people aren't as open to those things. And I also feel like there is a lot more rubbish around. Like, I guess it's more polluted by people is the best way to say that. So I don't know really if it's from people littering rubbish trucks, or general pollution, or all of the above. Probably all of the above. But it's not always super clean entirely. Like, in our area where we live, like by the dog park, there is so much rubbish everywhere, and I don't know how they do it. It's not just rubbish that blows there, it's just disgusting. It's awful. And I hate it because Benji picks up things and we don't want him to pick up things. And I know New Zealand isn't actually the clean and green image that it portrays itself as. It is in some parts, but there is still pollution in New Zealand. And I believe New Zealand is like the highest contributor to greenhouse gases or CO2 emissions, one of those. So it's definitely not clean and green, but it just feels in Melbourne like there's more rubbish everywhere and it's more visible. The next thing I find weird about living in Melbourne and Australia in general is that you have to pay for museums and some parts of the art gallery. Like in Christchurch, the art gallery is free, the museum is free, there's a lot of free stuff to do, but here, museum pay for, and they ask for your postcode, which I remember when Mum was in Melbourne and someone asked her for a postcode, she was like really offended, and I'm like, they just do it for, I guess they're collecting our data, who knows. But yeah, I do like where museums have free entry, or if they have parts that are paid, that's a bit better because you can go in and do free stuff. Okay, next we have the sheep jokes. Now, I'm kind of used to these jokes because people make them all the time. They're not really creative and they're not that funny, so I don't get offended at them. Obviously they're not true, but people want a reaction out of you and they seem really offended when you make the joke yourself or you don't react to their said joke. And I'm just like, well, be more creative and I might react. Also, you can't get the New Zealand Arnott's ginger nuts really anywhere. I think we found them once in Coles, and you can get L&P here. I love L&P. That's a bit easier to get, but I want to say ginger nuts, you should have them when you're on a long road trip or on the sea in a boat, because they can help with like motion sickness, ginger in general. So take a packet of ginger nuts on your next road trip. I am a bit confused about scoop of chips. So in New Zealand, you can get half a scoop of chips at the fish and chip shop. You can get 1 scoop or 2 scoop of chips. And then Luke, when he's getting like ordering fish and chips, he keeps saying minimum chips. And then like small, medium, large, which kind of makes sense, but I guess New Zealand's a bit more simple when it comes to that, and I guess they can get away with having different sizes. Like I remember a scoop of chips used to like feed everyone for ages in New Zealand, and now it's like really pathetic. Also, I think I said this in my last video about this, a hot dog here from the fish and chip shop is called a sausage and batter, and that's actually what it is. It's the same thing, but in New Zealand they'll put like a popsicle stick into the sausage so that they can call it a hot dog. I feel like it makes it fun calling it a hot dog rather than a sausage and batter. And yes, I know the concept of a hot dog is a bread roll bun thing and a frankfurter, but it's just fun getting a hot dog from the fish and chip shop. This isn't one I personally thought of myself, but I was talking to Luke about it. He has been to New Zealand a couple of times now, and in New Zealand, in all the supermarkets, so New World, Pack and Save, Countdown, I'm not sure, I think it's gone to Woolworths now, you can get like mussels, and I hate the smell of them in the supermarket, so I generally just get like walk past. But you can get them really cheap, and apparently when Luke's family were over in New Zealand they ate a lot of mussels because they were so cheap, but they are like really easily accessible. And I feel like seafood in Melbourne doesn't taste as good as seafood in New Zealand. I don't know if that's because New Zealand is surrounded more by water, but I feel like it's kind of like the meat and dairy situation where the food is just a bit better quality in New Zealand. And the next one is that people don't say hi to you on the street. Like, I don't really care if you say hi to me or not. Like, sometimes I don't want to talk to anyone, that's fine. But even in Christchurch, everyone will like acknowledge you in some way. They'll either smile at you, say hi, especially on just like a nature walk or nature reserve. I think it's to seem non-threatening or something like that. But I find culture's really interesting because of this. And my final thing I find weird about living in Melbourne as a Kiwi is that I think people in Australia are way more nosy than they are in New Zealand. I don't know if it's just my anxiety in general, but I do constantly feel like I'm being watched and judged. Not necessarily while I'm putting stuff out on my blog or my YouTube. Like, if I walk down the street, I feel like someone is watching me, and that could be my anxiety or things like that. But this street that we live on, you can see, like most houses, you can see in and out, and it's very scary. But yeah, that's everything that I find weird about living in Melbourne as a Kiwi, part 2. No, as I said earlier, don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel if you want to see more of my content. I'm going to be focusing on a lot more sociological topics because those seem to be doing well. I hope you enjoyed this vlog, and as I said before, I'll post the previous one, the blog post, in the description below. I'm Ash and I make vlogs, and I'll see you next time. Bye!